The kitchen was a cage of peeling wallpaper and grease-stained wood. Every surface held the grime of 3 years of 10-hour shifts. Elias sat at the small, wobbly table, his gaze fixed on the center of the room. A single white envelope rested there, its edges sharp and crisp, against the dark, scarred surface of the table. It looked out of place, an intruder in the dim light. Outside, the distant, rhythmic thrum of the factory machinery vibrated through the floorboards, a constant reminder of the life he had been trapped in. He ignored the sound. He watched the envelope. The air in the room felt thick, heavy with the smell of cold coffee and damp plaster. A clock on the wall ticked, each second dragging, marking the slow decay of the afternoon. Elias reached out, his fingers hovering just inches above the paper. He did not move. He breathed in the stale air and waited. The silence in the house was absolute, broken only by the faint, metallic groan of the factory siren. He looked at the return address one more time. His pulse throbbed in his fingertips. He hooked his index finger under the flap and prepared to break the seal. He pulled. The paper gave way with a sharp, clean tear. He slid the heavy bond sheet out, his thumb catching on the edge. He did not look at the body of the letter. His eyes locked onto the bold black header at the top. Full academic scholarship. The words stood out, stark and undeniable. He let go. The paper fluttered, drifting through the air before landing face up on the floor. He stared at it, his breath hitching in his chest. He did not move for a long count, his mind struggling to bridge the gap. He leaned down, his joints stiff, and retrieved the sheet. As he brought it back into the light, his hands began to shake. The paper rattled, a dry, frantic sound in the quiet kitchen. He read the lines again, tracing the ink with his gaze. This was the exit. 3 years of grinding, 10-hour shifts, and the constant routine of the factory floor had led to this single, heavy page. The shaking in his hands intensified, spreading to his arms, then his shoulders. He gripped the paper tighter and finally exhaled. Elias walked to the window. Beyond the glass, the rusted gate of the factory stood as a jagged silhouette against the gray sky. He watched the workers filing toward the entrance, their movements mechanical and slow. The factory siren wailed, a long, piercing blast. It was the sound that had dictated every hour of his life for 3 years. His hand twitched toward the door handle, a reflex born of habit, but he stopped. He turned back to the room. He grabbed a pen from the table and drew a thick black line through the next week on his calendar. The ink bled into the paper. He pulled a heavy duffel bag from under the bed, the canvas scraping against the floorboards. He began to fill it. He grabbed his few shirts, folding them with sharp, precise movements, and stacked his books on top. The siren wailed again, louder this time, demanding his presence. He ignored it. He walked to the front door, gripped the deadbolt, and turned the key. The click echoed in the small room, final and absolute. He sat down on the edge of the bed, the bag packed and waiting at his feet. Elias pulled a second envelope from the drawer, the paper crisp and clean. He sat at the table, the resignation letters spread out before him. He picked up his pen. His hand hovered for a second. Then he began to write. Each stroke was deliberate, the nib scratching against the surface with a rhythmic, steady sound. He finished the final line, signed his name, and folded the paper into thirds. He placed it squarely in the center of the table. He stood up, his movements fluid and unhurried. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the brass key to the front door, and set it down next to the letter. The metal made a sharp, metallic clatter against the wood. He grabbed his coat from the back of the chair, pulled it on, and turned toward the exit. He did not glance back at the room. He reached for the door handle, pushed it down, and stepped out into the cool air. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing the room. He walked away, his stride lengthening with every step, his focus fixed entirely on the path ahead. The weight in his shoulders had vanished. Elias reached the terminal just as the bus idled at the curb. He stepped up the metal stairs, handed his ticket to the driver, and moved to a window seat. The engine roared to life, a deep vibration that traveled through the floorboards and into his boots. He did not look back at the station. As the bus pulled away, he watched the factory slide into view through the side window. It grew smaller, then vanished behind a thick, gray cloud of diesel exhaust. He leaned his head against the cool glass. Outside, the buildings blurred into a smear of concrete. He kept his eyes fixed on the distance. The horizon widened, stretching out in a straight line that promised nothing but space. He watched the landscape shift from industrial gray to the open green of the countryside, his grip on the window frame finally loosening.